to Job chapter 35. I guess just a bit of a heads up, we're going to cover 35 today, and then next Sunday we'll have a sermon on just thankfulness with Thanksgiving around the corner, and then after that we're going to start Advent sermons. So yeah, we will have our first Advent sermon in the month of November. Hopefully it doesn't throw your church calendars off, but we will have a few sermons in there, and we'll come back to Job at the new year. So Job 36, January, whatever, the first Sunday in January. So Job 35 today, Elihu is continuing to talk. Elihu is the fourth speaker of this book, human speaker that is, and he continues to speak to Job. He has previously talked about the three friends of Job, how they have relied upon natural wisdom, natural man's religion or so-called religion to give explanation for what has happened. And then what have they said? They have said, Job, here is the system. You are suffering because you're a sinner. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is the way, and there's no other way. And of course, we saw they're terribly wrong. So Elihu has come and he has pointed out that error. He has also told Job that God speaks with a language of suffering. He speaks to your conscience. He speaks through your suffering. He speaks with the language of suffering. He brings you to the point of death, Job, so that you could call upon him in the hour of trial and understand you have a mediator. He comes to redeem you from the pit and lighten you with the light of life. And then he tells these wise men who are kind of looking on, and he says, let me tell you in chapter 34, how God defines justice. God is the one who defines justice. You don't define justice. All the wise men in the world don't define justice, but God alone. And now in 35, he kind of actually continues on his speech from 34 about justice. But he tells Job, he corrects Job. He corrects Job who says that living godly or sinful results in no benefit. That is what Job has said. And Elihu says, you are terribly, terribly wrong. If you remember, in Job 34:9, we didn't really address this because this is going to be addressed in chapter 35, but 34:9 says, for he has said, that is Job has said, it profits a man nothing that he should take delight in God. Really? My piety doesn't matter? My responses, my sin doesn't matter? Well, Elihu is really going to tee off on this. The beauty of the Bible, and specifically Job, is it addresses issues we're too ashamed to bring up. I don't know about you, I don't know a lot of people who even among their closest confidants would ever say, how am I better off than had I sinned? I don't think my piety, my godliness, or my sin has changed anything in my life. And whether I have sinned up to heaven or become a saint, there's been no difference in my life. What? How could you say that, Job? Living a godly life hasn't protected me from suffering, then what's the point of living? What's the point of being good? What's the point of being good if being good has only brought suffering? This is Job's question. Are there not blessings for obedience, punishments for disobedience? Doesn't my piety profit me in some way? Aren't I insulated from danger by seeking the Lord? Every single person in this room has thought this way. And it actually comes up when we suffer. But Job says the quiet part out loud, as they would say. And He asked a tough question, and he's going to get a tough answer. So 3 quick, I can't say that, 3 points. You guys are so gracious. 3 points. First point, the wrong question, verses 1 through 4. The wrong question in verses 1 through 4. Elihu answered and said, do you think this to be just? Do you say it is my right before God? That you ask, what advantage have I? How am I better off than if I had sinned? I will answer you and your friends with you. This is the wrong question of all wrong questions. Elihu is quoting Job, and he's paraphrasing Job's thought. Just a quick word before we get into the question itself. I know many of you use the NASB, the New American Standard Bible, and there's a bit of a translation issue in verse 2. My ESV says, do you say it is my right before God? The NAS says, my righteousness is more than God's. Commentators are all over the map on that. The point is actually, either way, whatever translation your Bible renders that, either way is Job's righteousness mattering. Job thinks his righteousness matters. Does it matter? Your righteousness doesn't matter. Okay? But here's the heart of the message in verse 3. What advantage have I? How am I better off than if I had sinned? I've been living a long, godly, faithful life. I've been sacrificing for my kids just in case they happen to stumble into sin on their birthday. I've built this estate because God loves me. And he's saying all of it doesn't matter at all because I am now presently suffering. Leading a godly life has not resulted in any benefit. I have no advantage to take delight in God because you still suffer. Whether I had sinned or not, I am no better off. The audacity and sadly the blindness that someone would say this, right? We can sympathize a little bit when one person who is in a situation basically gets treated unfairly. They get hosed, right? This might work for some of you. It might work for some. The illustration that came to mind for me was Peter Rabbit. When Thomas McGregor finds out the other guy got the promotion, and he goes on a psychotic rampage, destroying every toy in the store. I know you four remember this. I don't know if anybody else does. What is he incensed about? Injustice. I've been working my tail off at whatever English store this is, toy store, and this lazy bloke gets the promotion, and I don't. Right? That strikes a chord. That's Job's problem. That's his dilemma. I've been living godly for life, and yet my life is ruined. I don't get it. So we can sympathize, but we have to understand that we shouldn't sympathize. It is an absolutely blasphemous question. It is an absurd question. How can you say you have not benefited from a godly life? How can the saints say they have never benefited from a godly life? Have you never enjoyed God's friendship? Job would say, the friendship of God was on my tent. We walked together. We lived together. He was there with me in all times. Have you never enjoyed time in prayer? Have you never enjoyed fellowship with God? Have you never enjoyed God's people? Have you never enjoyed the promises of God? Have you never enjoyed what has resulted from God's favor upon you, which is sometimes and often earthly blessings? You could turn back to chapter 29, and what does Job think about? Oh, I wish that this never happened. The elders loved me. I was the chief elder. They all came to me for my wisdom. I was esteemed. My reputation was to the moon. Oh, everybody just loved me. I want those days again. Well, what got that? No doubt. God gave that. By grace, though. Not by your piety, Job. And so there is a balance. I shouldn't say there's a balance. There's a double hinge here of what the saints' piety brings them, but at the end of the day, what it does to God. And on the other hand, there's another absurd question from the consequences of sin. Really? In verse 3, how am I better off than if I had sinned? Are you telling me that had you sinned, you would have been just the same? Sin damns to hell. Sin sears the conscience. It takes glorious creation and uglifies it, beautifies evil, imprisons all in darkness. It separates you from God. How could you say you're not better off than if you had sinned? That is incredibly, incredibly blasphemous. Of course you are better off from being godly. You've enjoyed God and his fellowship and his kindness and his love. And sin would have had none of that. Sin never blesses. It never profits. It always condemns. The only time someone would say this question of Job is if he understands the sweetness of God and fellowship with Christ to be less fulfilling than a drop of dopamine. Oh, I just want that good urge, that sense of pleasure. No, Christ matters all. And sin destroys all. The very fact that Job says this, an eminently godly man, says you and I say this. Job could say it. We can say it. We can be in this position to say, I see now that pursuing the Lord has resulted in no blessing. I see now that chasing Christ has not benefited me because the suffering still came. We say these things, but we must never ask these things. We are never better off than having sinned. We are never better off than having sinned. So that's the wrong question. Part 2 here, an astounding answer in verses 5 to 8. An astounding answer in verses 5 to 8. This is his answer. Look at the heavens and see, and behold the clouds, which are higher than you. If you have sinned, what do you accomplish against him? And if your transgressions are multiplied, what do you do to him? If you are righteous, what do you give him? Or what does he receive from your hand? Your wickedness concerns a man like yourself, and your righteousness a son of man. You ever been asked a loaded question and you don't know where to begin? That's where Elihu is. He's like, okay, I don't even know how to start among this foolishness. He says, let me start by addressing the assumption. Job, there is an assumption in your question, which is that I can move God to act kindly by my piety, or by my sin, I can move God to act in another way. By my actions, I move God to do actions against me. And Elihu says, look to the clouds. Look to the clouds, to the heavens. They go on above the land. Nations war down here on the land. People fight. They get married. They live and they do all this stuff, and the clouds are just going on by. Unfazed, unaffected by mankind. And he uses this as an illustration to say, God is in the heavens. You do not affect him at all. You think you affect him by your actions? No, not at all. That's the assumption Job has in his question, and that's what Elihu wants to correct. Look up, be reminded of your smallness, of your human smallness. Look up to God's transcendence. Just as the clouds are unaffected by what goes on the earth, so is God with mankind. Our sin does not affect God. I want to get technical for you with just a minute. God does not have hurt feelings when you sin. He's not overcome with emotion and sad. God exists in a perfect and unaffected blessedness. And nothing we do alters that. Changes it, adds to it, erases from it. This is what we call God's impassibility. Impassibility. And my kids were saying impossibility? No, impassibility. Impassibility. He is not controlled by any passions. God is unable to suffer. Our actions do not give or take from him. This doesn't mean that God doesn't care whether we sin or not. It means we cannot, by our actions, put God in a state he's not already eternally in. He's eternally joyful, loving, patient, forbearing. And nothing we do changes that. Nothing we do. Nothing we do causes God to be moved from one state to another state. Sarah makes me dinner, and for some dumb reason I do not like it, and I tell her, and she's hurt. She goes from being happy, I can't wait to make a good meal for my thick-headed husband. And then I come along and say, this chicken is dry. It's like we went to Bubba's, okay? She'd be hurt. She'd go from happy to joy. God doesn't do that. He doesn't change. He's perfectly blessed, eternally so. Nothing you do can ever change God from being loving to more loving or less loving. He's perfectly blessed eternally. You can't move God from one state to another state. You see how this matters for Job? Well, how if I'm better if I had sinned? Whether it's piety, sin, no. Elihu says, you don't get it. You're operating on legalism. You're operating on the fact that you affect God. Not at all. Not at all. You do not affect God at all. There's no leverage with God by our actions, good or bad. No leverage, which means all actions from God to us are completely, totally gracious, freely done. He is impassible. That's verse 6. Verse 7, he's immutable. Same thing almost. He doesn't change. Verse 7 says, so in verse 6, Elihu addresses if he had sinned, what do you do against him? You don't do anything against him. He's completely impassible. Verse 7, and if you're righteous, let's go on the other side of the coin. If you're righteous, what are you going to give him? What is your piety and righteousness going to give the Holy Lord? He has all. He is not impressed. Did you know God is not impressed by your righteousness? He is not impressed. Not only because he knows you thoroughly. Oh, what a cute little exercise of patience that was. even though everything we do is tainted with sin. No, we don't give him anything. He's not impressed. Nothing is ever taken or added to him. He's never subject to change. He can't increase or decrease. He never lacks. He has no potential for change. If Craig says to Shepherd, I saw you on that combine harvester last year. You have great potential to be a rancher, a farmer. Shepherd has potential. Okay? There's room for growth, right? There's no potential in God. He is already maximally perfect, loving, kind, holy. There's no room to grow up or go down. He's immutable. Eliphaz has actually already said this in chapter 22. He said, Is it any pleasure to the Almighty if you are in the right? Or is it gain to him if you make your ways blameless? No. God isn't gaining anything. You gain. God doesn't gain. Romans 11:35, who has given a gift to him that he might be repaid? How do you give God anything? He has everything. It's the ultimate divine regifting. He gives us all things out of his own bosom and hand and loving kindness. And we give a fraction of that back to him. What's he going to say? Oh, I really missed that. He is totally, sufficiently supplied in his own joy and eternal blessed state. He needs nobody, no thing, nothing. Beautifully, because God is impassible and immutable, he doesn't change, he cannot love the saint anymore. Those whom he loves fully. Those whom he loves perfectly. Oh, we judge God by our love. No, he doesn't decrease in his love. The cup is filling over. There's no more room for anything else. And on top of that, the quality of the love, it's perfect. You see what Elihu is saying here? He says, Job, your question of piety or sin assumes that you can affect God. You can't. You can't. God associates with his people on pure grace. Rather than affecting him, verse 8, your wickedness or righteousness affects yourself. It affects yourself. It doesn't affect him. You can't leverage with him anything. You can't say, because I've done these great things, you are obligated to do this for me, God. No, not at all. Sin brings trouble. Righteousness profits us, not God. As commentator Christopher Ash says, since we cannot affect the blessedness of God by our actions, there is no way we should expect to gain any kind of leverage with him. See how understanding God as impassible means that the gospel is gracious? Because he cannot be affected. He acts freely. Never cajoled, never obligated to do anything, because he acts freely. We don't move him from a position of hate to love. He's already loving. He's already gracious, and perfectly so. We need to rest in God's impassibility and immutability. Many of us are striving, churning our legs, trying to get God to love us more, or think by my works, bad or good, God will be affected. No, he already loves his children. I was reading John Owen sometime last week. He says, when does the father love the child? And in his day, obviously they had no sonograms or ultrasounds or anything. Well, when mommy starts to get a little bigger, and he goes, oh, my wife is pregnant. Then the father loves the son. Does the son love the father? No. The baby doesn't even know about a father. Doesn't even know about a mother. So it is with the love of God. He loves us first. And in a cute, childish way, we reciprocate that little bit of love back to him. And that's grace. What does Deuteronomy 7:7 say? I didn't pick you, Israel, because you're so wonderful and numerous and mighty. No, I loved you because I loved you. Period. Full stop. Not, and because of this. No. I loved you because I loved you. I chose to love you. It's a gracious choosing, gracious will. If you were to just paint a picture of this in your mind, how would a criminal who knows he's guilty appeal to a judge who is impassible, a loving judge? What would he say? Look at my parole record. Look at the time I've served. Look at the good behavior I've had. This is my plan after prison. I'm going to come back and work in the prison and help them out. I want to preach the gospel, do whatever. What would he appeal on? On what account would he appeal? What basis would he appeal? He doesn't have to appeal on anything. All that he said, is himself. He should just appeal to the judge and say, Judge, I know you're full of love. Be merciful to me. That's all. God's impassibility makes the gospel gracious because he just chooses to save. We don't make him save. We don't augment him, alter him at all. He is maximally loving already and eager. Knock at the door. Knock at the door. He'll answer. We affect ourselves. We keep us from him, not him from us. So that is his astounding answer. The rest of the chapter it's actually a fairly condensed and short illustration of this. A sobering illustration, verses 9 to 16. A sobering illustration. Because of the just kind of preface this with, suppose that, okay, because of the multitude of the oppressions, people cry out. They call for help because of the arm of the mighty. None of them says, where is God my maker, who gives songs in the night, who teaches us more than the beasts of the earth, and makes us wiser than the birds of the heavens. There they cry out, but he does not answer, because of the pride of evil men. Surely God does not hear an empty cry, nor does the Almighty regard it. How much less when you say that you do not see him, that the case is before him, and you are waiting for him. And now, because his anger does not punish, and he does not take much note of transgression, Job opens his mouth in empty talk. He multiplies words without knowledge. There's actually less going on here than it sounds. He uses 9 to 16 as an illustration to show you have no leverage, Job. You have no leverage with God. It's all grace. God is not moved by us, and he operates by grace because no one calls out to him in faith. That's the big point of 9 to 16. Here's the situation in verses 9 to 11. The situation. There are mighty people, and they oppress the people. Okay, verse 9. Mighty oppress the people. Verse 10. But none of those who are oppressed ever says, where is God my maker? The mighty oppress the people, and the people who are oppressed never have the thought to go and say, where is God my maker? And he says, this God who gives songs in the night, right? He gives you the laments in the dark hours of the night to cry out to him and sing to him. He also, and this is also another translation issue in verse 11. God teaches us more than the beasts of the earth. The Bible, the Hebrew is kind of tough. Is God teaching the beasts of the earth and he teaches us more than them? Or does he teach us by looking at the beasts of the earth? Right? Either way is actually a faithful translation. But the point is you're much more loved than the beasts of the earth. You're much more wiser than the birds of the heavens. Why are you not calling out to God in faith, which is the second part in 12 to 13? There, the people cry out, but he does not answer. Why? Because of the pride of evil men. The evil men aren't the mighty. The evil men are the people. They don't cry out in faith. They just have an aimless shout. Oh, darn. Not, oh, help me, Lord. They just say, oh, I wish this never happened to me. Not, help me, Jesus. Our shouts are like that, unfortunately. I wish this never happened. Not a cry from prayer. As verse 13 says, surely God does not hear an empty cry, nor does the Almighty regard it. What's the point is, the Lord's not going to hear a cry when it's not from faith. Psalm 66:18. If I had cherished iniquity in my heart, the Lord would not have listened. The point is those who have evil done to them, but cry out in an aimless, godless way of, oh, maybe tomorrow will be brighter. It's not a faith. It's not a faith. So he applies this to Job in verses 14 to 16. He says, Job, if God does not answer the cry of the faithless, why would he hear you who complain with these empty words about he's unjust and he delays his justice and all this stuff? Again, you're talking like a wicked person. Okay? So this is his illustration. He's telling Job, you're acting like a wicked man. You're not suffering in faith. You're suffering like, you're thinking like a wicked person, an unbeliever. You assume you can leverage God with your works. And you can't. You thought your piety protected you from suffering, and it doesn't. Oh, the minute we started preaching through Job, first chapter, it was incredibly impressed upon me the utter nakedness and vulnerability with which we live. Any trial of any kind can come on at any time. And it is simply the goodness of God which brings it or moves it. In any way, we are completely vulnerable. This resonates for us. You ever thought your pursuit of Christ protects you from pain? Our chapter today says, no, not at all. We have to suffer with faith. Trust God and his goodness. Trust he brings trials because he loves us. Trust he hears your words when you don't think he does. Trust that he will act. God is no debtor to his creation because he's impassible and immutable. He is never in your debt by your sin nor by your piety. He is immutable, impassible, and unaffected. You cannot make him be something he already is. What is the is? loving, gracious, perfect in every way. You can't make him be that way. Everybody in this room has had an opportunity to say, I wish I could just make this person be kind to me. You don't have to do that with God. He already is. And so you take that storehouse of joy and gladness and love and say, just give it to me, Lord. You already are it. I don't have to do anything to gain it. All I have to do is come by faith. I believe you are as good as you say you are. None of our actions sway him, change him. He acts freely and graciously. He only, always, and ever will be disposed to listen and come to help those who call on him by faith. That is God, a Savior by nature. So, back to the introduction. What's the point of being good? What's the point of being good? Do you see how pregnant that is with legalism? The point of being good is not to get anything. We act rightly, we avoid sin because we are overwhelmed at the grace of God which has come to us when he should have judged us. What's the point of being good? It's to be thankful for who he is. Do you do good to get something, or are you good because he's already been good to you? What is the motive for your behavior? Do you avoid sin to avoid affliction? Or do you avoid sin because he's put an end to your sin? Are you living from a position of getting? Or are you living from a position of, I've received? That's the gospel. He's done everything for us. In his own free will and grace, he has come of his own accord in the person of Christ to save you. How gracious is that? Brothers and sisters, receive his free grace again today. Receive his free grace which he lavishes on you through Christ, that you may enjoy him and glorify him forever. Let's pray. O gracious Father, what can we give to you that you do not have? Nothing. We find ourselves underneath a waterfall of loving kindness. We can no more affect you. We cannot change you at all. And why would we? You are perfect in all your ways. Just, gracious, merciful, kind, patient, loving, forbearing, just perfect. Cause us to glorify you for your kindness to us. We pray this in Jesus' name.